around opening their homes and their hearts to children. And so we're about trying to break down unnecessary barriers. Doesn't mean that there won't be processes that we have to comply with that are part of the policy and procedures, and sometimes legislatively put in place policies and procedures like background checks and, you know, home studies and, what's the fire and safety checks for homes and all of those things that have to be done. But we think that we should be able to move quicker than we have in the past. We should be able to make those connections in a way that doesn't put up unnecessary barriers for families. We have enough resources that if we do this right, we won't have children waiting for families. We'll have families waiting for children, which is the way I believe, you know, it should be. And that's not the way it is right now, you know, and I believe that there's a family for every child. And some people tell me I'm naive to think that, but I've been in the field of child welfare long enough to see children come out of state schools who were completely physically and mentally handicapped go into adoptive homes. I've seen it happen, you know, from the time when I was a caseworker. And so I think if children don't have homes, it's because we haven't done what we need to do to find homes for them, because the families are out there. And so a part of the project that we're going to be doing through CME6, and with the commitment from Bishop Porter of this effort, we have identified the 6 churches that Tina mentioned, and our goal is to really seek, through the leadership of the pastor and the partnership with those of us who have come together around this project, that we will begin to decrease the number of waiting children in Dallas and in Tarrant County. There are efforts across this state that have proved to be very effective. And you're going to hear about one most profound, I believe, to think different about how we approach this work. We cannot use the same mindset that created this problem to try to resolve it. You know, and so that means really getting outside of the box, really thinking about non-traditional ways of doing this work, making ourselves available when families can be available, you know, not putting ourselves into an 8 to 5 box or how long is Pride classes now?
12.
Is it 12 weeks?
It used to be 12 weeks.
They vary.
12 hours.
It varies. It depends on the agency. There is usually 25 to 30 hours, but they do it differently as far as class.
Kind of what we're saying is that when we reach out to faith-based communities and to community in general and say we need homes for our children, then we have to allow for as much flexibility as possible. And we heard from child placing agencies in a meeting we had a couple of weeks ago that they were willing to be flexible, to really hear from the families that came forward about times that it would be most convenient for them to go through the process, and that's part of breaking down the barriers. You had your hand up. And you know, what the agencies are going to be responsible for, because we also know that as families come forward, that the system has to be ready to receive those families. You know, we have to make sure that all the paperwork's been done for the children. You know, that all of those pieces that happen internal. One thing that we mentioned in our last meeting that we all need to be conscious of is that the courts have a role in this. And so one of the things that we plan to do is try to set up a meeting not only with the caseworkers who are involved in this, but to inform the members of the judiciary who have legal oversight over these cases, so that we are aware of all those things that could be potential barriers, so that we share it with families. We need to be able to tell you as much as we can tell you about the process, so that nothing comes by surprise as people, you know, and get through this and at the last minute hear something that they didn't know before. And so this is going to be an open and honest as transparent as possible process to help us to, again, get our children out of the foster care system. These children will come in all ages. The children who are waiting the longest are generally part of a sibling group, older children, children who many times have given up on any hope for adoption. But you know, that's something that a loving relationship can re-inspire those children, and you know, we're hoping that we will be able to present families who will make a difference in the lives of these children. No child should have to grow up in foster care and age out without some kind of connection to a permanent and loving home. And that happens too often to our children. And then what happens next is that they end up in the criminal justice system, they end up homeless, or they end up dead, or they end up repeating the cycle of abuse and neglect with their own families. And so I believe that we can put a stop to that, we can make a difference. And again, I just want to thank those of you who have come in the interest. Permanency is achieved when children no longer have a caseworker. And that's what it means to find a permanent and loving home for a child, is that they will be in a place where they no longer, at some point, have to have a caseworker coming in to the schools or to the home or to wherever to check on them, because they will be in a family that they know is their own. Yes.
Thank you all so much for coming and being a part of what's going on with the children. I've been noticing, I picked up this sign out there, why not you? And this is some words that I feel like that ought to be lingering on all of our hearts tonight. Why not, instead of saying you, make it real personal and say, why not me?